In this video, what I would like to do is to review how we can use a Google form in order to provide some type of assessment opportunities for teachers and students. It's really going to be up to you to decide how you want to use this, but I want to show you the basics and then discuss some of the parameters and some of the options that you will need to consider when using this for your own classroom. So the first place I'm going to start is actually in my Google Drive. It is a Google document, Google type document, and we want to make sure that we have a good spot for them. So I would encourage you to start in your Google Drive and find a folder that you want to store it in. So I have a classes folder and a demo math folder. So I'm going to go ahead and click New, because this is where I'm going to create the form. And then I'm going to go down to More and then Google Forms. Now I do have the option of creating a Google form from a blank form or from a template. I'm going to choose blank form. So this is my Google form screen. We're going to start by, at the top, giving a title for this form. So I'm just going to say this is a linear equations simple quiz, something of that nature. When I'm done, I can hit enter or click off of that, and then it's going to save that. It will also pick up what I put here and put it in the title if I didn't have anything there already. So this is the name of the quiz. If I go back to my Google Drive folder, you'll see that that was updated there. So that's the name of my Google form. Below the title, we can give it some kind of form description if we would like to. And then if we didn't like that title, we could also give it a different title. Now you'll notice that when we create a Google form for the first time, we are given a option, one particular question that we can use. It's a multiple choice question. You don't have to use that if you don't want to, but we could use that as a starting point. It's given to you when you first start. I do want to direct your attention to this area over here. This is going to be where we can add different things to our form. Now, some of that we're going to review, some of that we're really not going to cover. So let's just review some of the things that we can do real quick, and then we can get into the creation of a particular quiz here or form. The first is we can add a question. Now, most of your form is going to be based on questions and different types of questions. This sample question right here, you can see it is of type multiple choice. If I select the drop down, you'll see that there are a variety of different quiz or question options rather. We have short answer, we have paragraph, multiple choice, checkboxes, drop down, file upload, linear scale, multiple choice grid, checkbox grid, date and time. Now some of these I'm going to review and some of these I'm not going to review. So let's just go over them real quick to see what we're talking about here. And I'm going to kind of talk about them in relationship to an assessment so that you can kind of understand why I may choose to use some or may avoid some of them. First is short answer. This is going to be a textual or numerical type of answer, something that the students are just going to enter in based on a particular prompt or visual. So this is short answer. Now, if we're creating a quiz, one of the options we will have that I will review is how to make the Google form an actual quiz. There's an actual setting inside the form that will make this a quiz. If we set that, one of the options that we have is to create an answer key and have Google Forms grade the quiz itself. So when the student submits it, Google Forms will go through and grade it automatically. And that's really what we want to tap into here. So if we're dealing with short answer, one of the things you're going to have to keep in mind is if you want the form to grade it automatically, you have to be really careful here. So you're going to have to structure your questions really well and provide a lot of different varied options so that the Google form can know how to correctly answer it, or correct it rather. All right, so just keep that in mind. We also have a paragraph. A paragraph is for long textual responses. Now, you're really running out of the ability to have the Google form grade that particular field. It's very difficult to do that. So if you have a paragraph option, it's going to be one of those types of questions that you're probably going to need to come back to and manually review. The form is probably not going to be able to adequately grade that for you. So just keep that in mind as well. I'm creating a math quiz, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create as many fields as I possibly can that are very objective and I can set the answers for so that the form can grade itself. We do have multiple choice, as you see here. So this is just an option or a question where we can create several options and the students can select from those options. Multiple, or checkboxes rather, is very similar to multiple choice, but in the checkboxes they actually have the ability to select multiple answers, and so we may go in and see that. Drop down is very much like a multiple choice. It's just kind of different in its display. Instead of different little radio options that you'll see later on, it's just a drop down with all the different options that they can select. There is one key difference other than the display. In a multiple choice question, you do have the ability to add this other option, and basically what that is the option for students to type in their own option. So if they don't like the multiple choices that they were given, they can use the other area and then they can type in their own response. You can use that as a teacher. You can provide them with that option, but you don't need to. So that's the major difference between drop down and multiple choice. In the drop down, you do not have that option. You can't give them the ability to type something in other than the options that you provided. With multiple choice, you do have that choice. File upload is a question-ish type of thing where you can ask people to upload files. You can set a lot of parameters on those things. One of the things that you got to keep in mind is it is somewhat limited to people that are using Google, so you got to be careful there. We're not going to see that in this particular quiz, but you can explore that on your own. Linear scale is the ability to have someone answer a question based on a scale. So in a linear, I'll just show that to you right here. In a linear scale, you have the choice of starting at a 0 or a 1, and then you can go up to a maximum of anything from 2 to 10. And so what you do is you provide the minimum label, what does the lowest value represent, and what does the highest value represent, and then you're basically asking them to select something in the middle. You typically see this in a rating type of question. How well do you rate our service? 0 being the worst, 10 being the best, and then you pick something in the middle. That's a type of question that you can use. I'm really not going to use that in my quiz, so I'm not going to do a lot of demonstration on that, but you can explore that on your own. Then we do have multiple choice grid and a checkbox grid. These two are basically multiple questions in one, where they have all of the same options. So you have different types of prompts, all with the same multiple choice options or checkbox options. And I'm actually going to use these in this quiz so you can take a look at them, because they can come in handy if you have many questions all with the same options or checkbox options. It's sometimes easier to roll all of that into one question as opposed to creating different questions. Then we also have date and time. Date is just a date selection, time is just a time selection. You can use those. The thing to keep in mind at the time of this recording, those are not things that you can automatically grade with the Google form. You can't enter a key value there. So if you're asking, hey, you know, on what date was the U.S. established, or when is the Independence Day, you're not going to be able to set the correct answer and then grade it. You're going to have to come back to those and manually grade them. So both the date and the time are like that. So you just got to keep in mind that you may not be able to do that with the automatic grading. All right, so those are the different types of questions that you have. And again, you can play around with those. I'm going to just create a very simple little quiz and show you a little bit of what we can do with some of these, all right? But we're going to really focus in on how to get this set up as a quiz and graded so that we can issue it to our students. All right, so before we actually add any more quizzes, I just want to run through some of these options that you have. One thing you can do is you can import questions. So if you have another Google form somewhere that you already had questions for and you want to just bring them in, you can go ahead and use that. I'm going to assume at this point, since you're watching this video, you've never created a Google form before, so you don't have any questions to import, so we're just going to skip over that for now. The next thing you can do is add a title and a description. Basically, this is just kind of a section header if you want. All right, you can put that somewhere, and it just basically allows you to add some kind of division in your quiz, like maybe part 1 and then the directions for those questions or something of that nature. I rarely use this, so I'm going to delete that. And just to show you how to delete something, you basically just click on the item and you will find a trash bin somewhere. On some of these, they're on the right-hand side. On some of them, they're down at the bottom. So you can just go ahead and click the delete button and it will trash it. If you did it by accident, pay close attention to the bottom left. You can always undo that. You can also use Control-Z or Command-Z and undo those from your keyboard. The other option you have is to add an image. So this is basically going to give you the ability to add an image. It's kind of like a section title, so you could use this as an image that students are going to look at for several questions. Maybe it's a map and then you add several questions based on that map. You can do that. And you can also add a YouTube video if you want, so if you need them to watch something and then answer questions on that, you can do that. I'm not going to put that in my quiz for a variety of reasons, but you could certainly explore with that. It's a great way to have them watch something within the form itself and then answer questions on that. If you're using Edpuzzle and you're already comfortable with that, it's basically doing the same type of thing, just with less options. You're basically just watching the video and then you're using the Google form to create the questions. The last option is sections. You can actually create different sections in a Google form. I'm not going to go over that. It's kind of complex. You can use them to break your assessments up into multiple areas. You can actually use them as landing points based on answers that students give for other questions, which, if it sounds confusing, it really is. So basically what I can do is, if they have maybe a multiple choice question, I could, based on their response, send them to a different section of the form. So we're getting a little complex, so I'm not going to really review that in this video. I want this to be as short as possible. All right, so let's go on to creating our quiz. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a quiz. I'm going to create a multiple choice question for my quiz. And I'm going to say, let's say, what is the slope of the line 4x minus 2y equals 6. All right, so there's a question that's a linear equation question. What is the slope of that line? And then what I can do is add some options. So I could say, hey, maybe the one option is 6. I'm going to add another option, say -2. Whoops, -2. Add another option of 4. And then I could add an option of +2. And maybe I could add an option of none of the above, none of these. Okay, or I could add that other option. So if I want to give them the option of putting an other in there, I can do that. Otherwise, I can remove that. If you need to remove any of these, you certainly can. You'll notice here you can also add images that go along with these options, which is a really nice tool. I'm not going to review that with you. You can also reorder these things if you need to. All right, you can reorder them here, and there's another way to reorder them as well. If you come down here to the bottom, this More button, you can select to shuffle the option order. So as these are presented to the individual taking this quiz, they will see those options shuffled. All right, so you're going to be careful if you choose that. It's great in a quiz, especially if people are sitting next to each other, but sometimes we have these multiple choice options that have none of these or all of the above, right? If those are valid options, you got to keep in mind they're going to be shuffled in there. So all of the above may actually end up at the top. So you just got to be careful about how you use that. So if you don't really want that and you still want to use these options, then you want to uncheck that. But if you, I'm going to take that out and click that out. And then I'll shuffle the order options, and then now they're all shuffled, and my students aren't necessarily going to see them all in the same order. Okay? Now I'm going to add another question here. Before I do that, though, one of the things you can see here is I can actually use this duplicate button to duplicate a question if I would like. Sometimes it's helpful to not reinvent the wheel there on each question. And I can also set that to be required. So if I want to make sure that the students don't submit this until they have an answer for each question, I can require everything. So you have to use that at your discretion. Some of the other things that you can also do is you can add a description. So if you need to add more information for that particular question outside of what you put there for the prompt, you can certainly select that. If you uncheck it, you can have that removed and it's not going to be displayed. Okay. All right, let's add another question here. I'm going to duplicate that, but this time I'm going to choose a short answer. And this time I'll just say, hey, what is the y-intercept of the line 4x minus 2, y equals 6? So then now they have a short answer. Now again, keep in mind that if I want the form to grade this for me, I'm going to have to make sure that I have some good options set. And we'll see that as we progress along. All right, let's add another question here. This time I'm going to add a multiple choice grid. So let's do that. All right, in this particular question, we are going to ask if, we're going to say select if the line, or determine if the line is increasing or decreasing. Okay, so basically what this is going to allow me to do is to add multiple instances, multiple items here, and then the columns are going to be the options. So for the columns, I'm going to say increasing, and I'm going to say decreasing. So these are the options that each of these rows is going to have. So I'll add a line here, y equals 2x plus 1. I'll add a line here, y equals negative 3x minus 4. And then maybe I'll add another one, 2x plus y equals 5, something like that. So those are all different rows, and each of them will have these options. Now, it might be a good idea for me to kind of show you a preview of what we're dealing with here. So if you want to see what's going on and see what the perspective of the student is, you can come up here to the little eyeball, which is the preview option. And you can check that or click that, and then you're going to see what the students are seeing. So here's the multiple choice question. They can only choose one. The little red asterisk at the top means it's required. Here's my short answer, and this is my multiple choice grid. So here in each row, I have one of these lines, and then I can check one of the options for each one. Okay. One thing to note here is if you ever come to this screen and you are the one that is the owner of this screen, for some people, they end up back at their forum and they see this and they say, well, how do I get back to edit mode? At the bottom right, you'll see a little pencil in a circle. And if you see that, you have edit permission, so you can click that and edit it. I still have it open in my tab, so I'm just going to go back here. But that's just a way to get back at that. All right, and let me duplicate that again. And this time I'm going to add a checkbox grid. And this time what I'm going to do is I am going to say determine which of the points are solutions to the given line. All right, and so what I'm going to do here is in my columns, I'm going to add points. And I've already prepared these ahead of time, so I'm going to put those in here. So I'm going to have the point 0, 2, and I'm going to put in a point 0.5, 3, and I'll add a point 4, 0. Now the idea behind this one is for each of these lines that we put in here, the students are going to be able to select as many of these as possible. All right, as many as they want. So I'm going to make this line 2x plus 2. I'm going to make this, whoops, I lost it there. Too much backspacing there. We're going to make this y equals negative 2x plus 4. And I'll add a third one here, y equals negative 0.5x plus 2. All right, now at the bottom here, I do have the ability to require a response in each row. So if I select that, then it's going to require one selection per row. Now if I do that here, I can also make sure that the students require a response in each row. Okay, so let's take a look at how that looks. I think I lost my tab here somehow. In editing perhaps. So I'll reload that, and now we can see here are those rows. I can make sure that if I click in here, watch this, if I click on one, it says, hey, this question requires more than one requires one response per row. So that's just an indication, hey, you got to go through each of these rows and you've got to select something for each one. Same down here. This one's going to require a response for each row. So the students now, in this particular question, for this one, they can select as many of these as apply. So they're going to have to choose how many of these actually apply. And so for your particular discipline, you could use that if you wish. You just have to determine how that best fits your scenario. Okay, so that's actually, let's actually add one more question. What we could do is add a, let's see here, let's add a drop down. And for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a question, but I'm also going to add an image. So one of the things you can do is you can add images for kind of like a grouping, just have a heading, or you can add images for a particular question. So in a linear equations quiz, it might be nice to have a little image here. So I'm going to click that, and then it's going to give me the ability to upload something, take something with my camera. I've got a lot of options. I'm going to go to my Google Drive, and I'm going to find one of my recent images. There it is. Okay. That's going to get pulled in. So that's an image there. And what I might say is, what is the slope of this line? All right, so that students have a chance to look at this image. And this is really nice too, because then I could just duplicate this over and over again and just change out this image with this option here. I can just change it out for each question and have the same thing here. So let's give them some options. What is the slope? Maybe the slope is -2, or maybe the slope is -1, 1, and 2. We'll give them those options. Okay, I can require that from them as well. And then if I go over here and refresh, reload that, we'll see here there's a question, there's the question title, and there is the image, and then they can select. Okay, very similar to the multiple choice, but you can use it instead of all of those radios. Okay, so that's enough of the quiz there. I think we've built up enough, and you've seen enough of these options to get a good feel for what you can do. Let's talk about the quiz in general, all right? Before we get the quiz in general, let's just deal with the fact that, yes, you can create different themes. If you don't like the color theme, you can mess around with that. If you want an image, you can add that. You can change the font, okay? I know that's very important to some. It's not overly important to me in this video, so we're going to skip over all that. Let's go to the settings. All right, I'm going to skip over all of this, and we're going to go right to quizzes for now, because that's the key to this video. So the first thing I can do here is turn this on, make this a quiz. You notice everything is grayed out outside of this. So if I turn this on, now I have all these options. So what this does is it assigns point values to every question that I have, or allows me to add values to every question that I have, and it allows for auto grading. Now, one of the options that you have is if your school or your organization is using Chromebooks and they are managed by the organization, as my school is, what you can do is you can turn this locked mode on, and what that does is it forces people taking this quiz to be using a Chromebook, number one, and then what it does is it basically makes it go full screen and prevents them from accessing anything else in the Chromebook. So that's really great in a classroom situation. You can lock them in so that they can't do anything else. That's a really nice feature to use. Now, if you're doing this in an asynchronous type of situation and you're not necessarily going to be seeing people taking this, although you can certainly force them to use a managed Chromebook and it will go into locked mode, but if you're not actually seeing them, you don't really know if they're using another device in order to look stuff up. So you just gotta use your discretion there. This will allow you to release the grade at 1 or 2 stages. You can either immediately release it when they're done so that they can see their score, or you can release it later. So in cases where you may not want people to see their score, because some students tend to be disruptive when they see their score before other people are done, you can do that. You could also use that if you have some things that need to be manually graded. You might just want to wait until you're done reviewing all of them and grading all of them before you turn the grade back to the students. That's really up to you. You can play around with that. I typically use the immediate after each submission because most of mine is objective. Then you can choose to see, or you can choose what the student will see. You can allow them to see the missed questions if you would like them to. You can allow them to see what the correct answers were, and then you can allow them to see point values. I actually never select the correct answers. Even if I allow them to see the missed questions, I don't want them seeing the correct answers immediately unless this is just kind of a formative situation and I want them to start getting immediate feedback. Even sometimes I don't let them see the missed questions, because in some cases the missed question might be just two options, and if it shows that they got it wrong, then they obviously know exactly what the right answer was. So you use that at your discretion as well. All right, let's actually save that for now. I'm going to uncheck that. Let's save that for now. And let's go back to the quiz and see how we can set this up for some auto grading. So we'll take the first one, for example. We'll click on this. One of the things you'll notice at the bottom left is you now have this option of answer key. And what that does is it allows you to select the answer and also give a certain number of points. So the number of points is up to you. You're just going to have to decide how you're going to do that ahead of time. I'm just going to make everything 1 point, but you can certainly do that however you wish. You want to use percentages, again, it's up to you. You figure out what it is that you want to do. And then what I have the option of doing is selecting the correct answer. So if the correct answer is 2, what is the slope of this line? Then I'm going to select 2. That's going to be checked. The students are not going to see this. Okay, this is going to be hidden from them in the background. Google's just going to use this in order to correct their question. And then we could also provide answer feedback if we wanted to. I'm not going to do that at this point. So I'll click done, and then we can see that that's now worth 1 point. I can also see the green check mark indicating exactly what the correct answer is. Then I can come down here to the short answer. We'll click answer key here. This is going to allow me to type an answer and then also add points. So I'll add 1 point. This is not going to be overly difficult. I can put the correct answer in and I can type it out fairly easily. I could just put -3, which would be the y-intercept of that particular line. And I could add another correct answer here. I can keep adding correct answers. Basically what the form is going to do is it's going to check the student answer based on all of these possible correct answers and then mark it correct. Now, if you want to mark all of the other options as incorrect, you can check this box, and then anything that's outside of all of these options you provided, it's going to be wrong. If you leave that unchecked, then basically it's just going to leave it and allow you the opportunity to come back and check it. So for example, if you were asking for a word and the student is just a terrible speller and you couldn't anticipate all the incorrect spellings, rather than marking it wrong, you could just leave that unchecked, and then you could go back and grade it later. It's really up to you how you want to do that. I'm all about the auto grading, so I probably mark all the other answers as incorrect. Now, if I wanted to anticipate somebody saying, hey, they're going to type in the word -3, I could do that. I could say -3. All right, my students are going to be instructed to type numerical answers there, but again, I could certainly do that if I wanted to. All right, then I can click done. When I'm done, down here for the multiple choice grid, I can go through here and I can choose the answer key first, and I can assign a point value to each one. So that's why I said these are kind of like multiple questions all in one. And then I can set the answers here. So this one's going to be increasing, this one's going to be decreasing, and this one's going to be decreasing as well. So I can set those and click done. And then same thing here, answer key. I'm going to assign point values to each one. All right, and then 2x, so this is going to go through these 2 points. And this one is going to go through these 2 points, just that point actually, and this one's going to go through these 2 points. All right, then we'll come down to this one. What is this answer here? So we'll have the answer key, and this is very similar to the multiple choice. We're going to select the right answer here, which is 2, and we'll click done. All right, so for each of these, we now have point values. We can see at the top right here, kind of subtle, but it tells us how many total points we have. And so if you're just working on a point system, that's fine. If you're dealing with percentages and you want to add them all up to 100, you can check here to see if you've done all the math right. All right, and so you can go through all of that. Okay, now once we've done that, let's just take a look at some of the other options that we have before we actually ask a student to complete this. So the first thing is the general settings. The first option we have is to collect email addresses. In a school setting, you can use this if you're in a school organizational setting. You can use this. This is basically, it's not going to put an option on the form that collects their email address. I'm not going to have to type it out, but it's basically going to force them to sign in with a Google account. And then when they do sign in, it's going to pull their email address, their account, and kind of inject it into their responses automatically. So you could use that. I typically do use that in a situation in my school. Since I don't ask them ahead of time, I want to collect their email addresses because it's going to tie those responses to their account so that I know who it is. If I want them to get a receipt of all the responses on the quiz, I can check this option. And with this radio, if they request it, they get the options or the responses. If I select this, they'll always get the responses. For a quiz, I typically leave that unchecked. I can also restrict this to the users in my organization. That's something I typically do, so I'll leave that on. And for quiz, I typically limit that to one response. They are not going to be able to add more than one response there. And then I can also allow them to edit after they submit. This is for really long situations where students are not going to be able to complete something in one sitting. In order to save their responses, they're going to need to be able to submit multiple times. So you want them to be able to submit and then go back and edit. For my simple quiz, I'm not going to permit them to do that. And then you could also allow them to see a summary chart or text responses. And basically what that means is once they submit, they can see what other people did. And so in a particular quiz situation like this, I'm not going to allow that. But maybe in a situation where you want them to glean from others, it's not an assessment that's really going to count for anything, you could allow that, but you can use that at your discretion. Presentation, just a couple options. You can show a progress bar. I never use this, but it allows you to show the students their progress throughout the quiz. For really, 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 really long things, perhaps you want to use that, but I never really use that. You can shuffle the questions. This is a really good option. So this is a really great tool to use, again, if students are sitting right next to each other. It's important to be able to make sure that they can't track what the person next to them is doing. So what question number one is for one person, question number one is going to be something different for the person sitting next to them. So that's a pretty good option to have in a quiz, so I'll choose that. And then show link to submit another response is really grayed out here because I limited it to one response. If I unlimited that, then I'm going to have the option to submit another response, but I'm just going to leave that and we'll leave it at that. And then you can create a confirmation message. This is just what they see at the end, and it could say something like, I hope you did well, something of that nature. All right, and you can type that at your discretion as well. So we'll click save, and now we're ready to send this. So there's a couple different ways to send this, and there's a big purple button right here that says send, so let's click that and see what it says. So you have a couple options. You have the email. I do use this on occasion. I have a couple classes, virtual classes, where the students have to come in at a particular time and they have to take the quiz, so they schedule a time with me. So when they come in, I will just email them this form and it comes to their email and they click the link and we're all set. So that way only they are seeing it ahead of time. It locks them out. They can't share it with anybody else. If they do share it with somebody else, immediately after they start, they're done, they're in the quiz, and they have to explain to me why they took it outside of my presence. So I use that sometimes. If you do that, you just add the email address. You can change the subject if you want. You can change the message. And then you can also choose to include the form in the email. I don't recommend that for a quiz, though. Then you can choose a link. So here's the link to the actual form. I can shorten that if it's too long for me. And then I can copy this. So I can copy this and paste it in wherever. So I can paste this into an email if I needed to. I can paste this onto Google Classroom if I wanted to. I can do whatever I normally do with links. All right, so you can do that. And then there's this embed option, but we're really not going to deal with that. If you have a Google site or a web page and you want to embed it into a web page, you can do that. We're not going to deal with that. So we're going to basically take this link, and I'm going to post it onto my Google Classroom. So I'm going to come over here. So I'm going to create material here and just put that link in there. But if you've ever used Google Classroom before and you've used this quiz assignment, you will know that what it actually creates is a Google form for you. And I'll cover that in another video, but for now we're just covering the basics of using forms. So I'm going to click material here, and I'll just type in a title. Yep, we got it. We're going to type in a title. What would I call it? Linear equations, simple quiz. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a link to that here. Got it. And that's going to be put into this material post. I'm going to select a topic, Unit 1, and then I can post it. All right, and so what that's going to do is it's going to post it for my students. So when they come in, they can click that and they can take that quiz. All right, we're going to pause here. I'm going to load up another student account, and so you can see what they see on their end. Okay, I have one of my students loaded here, and this is their view of the Google Classroom. So there's the quiz, and what they're going to do is they're going to click that, and they can click the forms, and now they're taking the quiz. All right, so they can go through here. I'm just going to provide some fake answers here, and we're going to see how well they did. Get some of them right, maybe. Let's say -2. And let's see, we'll just do something like this. All right, when they're finished, they're going to click Submit. And then this is what they're going to see. So this is the title. This was the message, confirmation message that I typed before, and now we have this button, View Score. So I'm going to click that, and now they can see how well they did. So here's the total points. They got 4 out of 9. All right, not too great. And here are the questions. Okay, but you'll notice it doesn't tell them which ones are correct and which ones are wrong, except for right here. Notice what we've got. Right, we've got the point values. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to load up another student, and we're going to see how well they do. Okay, here's my next student. We're going to click this quiz. And here's the quiz. They're coming in here now. They're going to answer this. They're going to get some of these right, some of these wrong. All right. And we'll just select that, and then we'll click Submit. We can view the score as we did before. This person did 4 out of 9 as well. Interesting. Okay, so that's the other student. Now let's go take a look at the teacher view of all of these responses. So if I go to my form here, I'm going to close the preview. If I go back to my form, I'm going to close this. What I should notice at the top next to questions is responses, and I see 2 here. So I'll click that. And there's quite a bit you can actually do in this screen, and it's developed over time, which is really nice to see. So based on, I'm sure, user feedback, Google's really beefed this up, which is very nice to see. So the first thing is we have the summary. So this kind of gives us some insights into how well people did. These are the points distribution. So for some reason, both of these guys just got 4 out of 9. So we can see the average was 4 out of 9, the median was 4 out of 9, the range was 4 points. All right, 4 minus 4 points. So it's really a range of 0 there, the min, minus the max. So here we see the frequently missed questions, which is really nice. It gives us some insight into which questions are most missed, what concepts we may need to reinforce. All right, maybe some questions that were worded incorrectly or poorly, or maybe even wrong, marked wrong. Here are the scores by the students, so I can see each one of them listed and what their score is. And if I keep going, I'm actually going to see some analysis of each question. So this is the first question. This is how they responded. This is the second. And we can keep going and just take a look at that. All right, that's a very nice little insight into things. Then we can actually take a look at the individual questions and see how well people did with each individual question. So here's the one question. These are the responses. I can see both of them got that wrong. I can select the question from the drop down, or I can just cycle through them using this little toolbar here. Here we have a different answer for each person. Here we have some variety in each of those, so I can just cycle through those and take a look at how well people did. Then I can actually take a look at the individual, which is nice. So if I'm really concerned about one particular person, I can take a look at them and see their whole quiz at a glance. So that gives me some insights as to how well they did. I can switch the student or cycle through them or select them. One of the nice options you have here is to print their response. So this is nice. It gives you the ability to actually maybe print it out, maybe for an administrator, maybe for the student to kind of review, maybe for a parent if you're having a parent-teacher conference and you need to review something. It gives you the ability to print that out. You can also delete that response. So if you want the student to actually be able to take it again, you can delete that and then they can retry it. You can release the score when you're ready, but it says here that the score was released at a particular time. You can use this if you had any kind of manual editing that you wanted to do on a particular assessment. So in fact, I can actually come in here and let's say for some reason this was just a bad question. I can come in here and I can actually award some points. I can save those changes and then I can release that score again. If I want to, and everything's going to update itself. So I'm going to actually go back there and leave that. All right, so you can play around with those options. Now there's a more advanced area where you can see things. If you come up here to the top right-hand area of this, you see this Google Sheet icon. So if you've already associated your responses with a Google Sheet and you click that, it's going to allow you to view that. If you click this, and you have not done that already, it's going to prompt you with the ability to either create a new spreadsheet, and by default it's going to take the name of your quiz and it's going to append responses at the end. Or you can select an existing spreadsheet if you want to add the responses there. Typically, if you've done this for the first time, you're going to just create a new spreadsheet. And you don't need to do this, but it's a nice place to take a look at multiple answers or multiple responses at the same time. It also is a good way to kind of archive responses for this and then clear out your form for a new set of students. So let me just show you that real quick. We can create this form, and what that's going to do is it's going to open up in a new tab, and here I can see a timestamp, the email address, the score, and all of the responses for all of these questions. So I have it in a nice, easy place. Okay, now that we have our responses in that spreadsheet, one of the things that it allows me to do is wipe out all of the responses. So if you come here to this button, you'll see that you have the option to delete all responses. Now, where this is great is if you are dealing with another section, maybe another semester or another year of students that are all going to be taking the same quiz. Rather than having them all be compiled along with the prior students, what we can do is we can delete all those responses and then only allow our new students to be seen here in these summaries. But in order to prevent yourself from losing all of those prior responses, you really want to utilize that spreadsheet. So we would use the spreadsheet like I just showed you, and then in the next semester or next year, we would come here, we would delete all the responses, and then what we would do is we would select a new response destination. So essentially we'd be selecting a new spreadsheet, and all the new responses would go in that new spreadsheet. All the old responses will stay in that old spreadsheet, and then we can go ahead and repeat this whole process over again. Okay? The other two options I just want to mention here you can see is the download responses in a CSV file. So if you want to download all of the responses, you can do that. You're going to get it in a similar format as the spreadsheet, but this time it's as a text document. So if you're familiar with CSVs, comma separated value files, or comma delimited files, then basically it's just a textual document that separates all that stuff by commas. So you can pull that in, and some cases you can import that into some applications for more analysis. But the spreadsheet, I think, is going to be more than enough for most people. And then obviously you can print all the responses. I never find that this comes out overly well, but this is one of those areas that's constantly changing, so you can play around with that and get what you want. Sometimes you can copy some of those images and display them and different things like that, but it's something that play around with if you really want to. Okay, I think that gives you a really, really good look at Google Forms and how you might use those for an assessment. I really hope that you're able to get out of it what you're looking for your own class.